Hey guys, John B here with PhoneArena, and this is our comparison between the Apple iPhone XS and the iPhone X. Apple definitely shook things up last year with the introduction of the iPhone X, a phone that was a radical departure for the company's normal release schedule. And this year, it's no surprise that we have its successor in the iPhone XS. With the newer device, it's always expected to be the superior one given all the incremental upgrades it's given. Then again, it begs the question of whether or not it's worth the upgrade. Not surprisingly, the iPhone XS features a recycled design. Now, this shouldn't come as a shock, especially how Apple has traditionally reused the previous generation's design with its S line of iPhones. They're obviously very similar. They both flaunt premium designs comprised out of those stainless steel frames that are sandwiched together by smooth glass surfaces. There are honestly two minor differences with their designs. The first one being that the iPhone XS is slightly heavier at 177 grams, but honestly you won't notice it that much. And secondly, the iPhone XS does have a better IP68 rating versus only IP67 with the iPhone X. The difference there is basically you could submerge the newer phone in 2 meters of water versus only 1 meter with the older phone. So last year, the iPhone X introduced us to Face ID, and Apple has mentioned that they've improved the true depth camera in the iPhone XS to be faster in unlocking the phone. In reality though, we really don't see significant change in that. The iPhone X recognizes and unlocks in just about the same time. And on top of that, the newer true depth camera in the iPhone XS still isn't perfect because sometimes we still find difficulty under bright sunny days or when we're wearing sunglasses. On paper, they both feature 5.8-inch Super Retina OLED displays with a resolution of 2436 by 1125 pixels. There's no problem making them out, they're both super rich and detailed. However, there are a few minuscule differences that kind of favors the iPhone XS. For example, it has a stronger brightness output of 664 nits and also has a more favorable color temperature of 6640 Kelvin, but the iPhone X isn't too far from those results as well. In all fairness, the improved characteristics of the iPhone XS are extremely minuscule. And even when we watch HDR content on YouTube on both phones, they produce the same vibrant colors, stunning clarity, great potent brightness, so we have two evenly matched displays here with no real victor. We'll cut straight to the point here. There's nothing different between the interface on both phones, considering they're both running the most up-to-date version of the platform, iOS 12. Everything about them are identical, so there's nothing different. This honestly shouldn't be a shock because the beauty of iOS is its uniformity from device to device. Apple really stressed a lot about the performance improvements with the iPhone XS's new A12 Bionic chipset. When it comes to synthetic benchmark tests, we'll definitely attest to that. However, when it comes to graphics processing, there's not much of a difference. Now, for anyone that has spent time using the iPhone X for the better part of the last year, like myself, they'll probably attest to a slightly snappier overall response with the new iPhone XS. And I see it in things like typing up stuff with the keyboard or just navigating around. It just feels like it's more responsive. When it comes to storage options, Apple has kept the same 64 and 256GB capacities as before, but with the iPhone XS, they've introduced a 512GB model as well. At the time of this video, the difference in price between the same capacity configurations for both iPhones is basically $100. So the 64GB iPhone X will sell for $900, while the newer iPhone XS carries the usual cost of $1,000. The camera performance is without question the most fascinating part about this comparison. And so far, they both closely match each other. But when it comes to their cameras, you know this is an area where Apple traditionally focuses a lot more of its attention on. So on paper, their dual cameras are kind of similar. In fact, they both feature the same 6-element 12-megapixel main camera with a wide-angle f1.8 lens, and that's paired with a secondary 12-megapixel sensor with an f2.4 lens, and that's the telephoto one. However, the difference here is that the main camera with the iPhone XS houses a larger sensor with bigger pixels, so essentially it's going to be able to gather in more light, and therefore it should prove to be better in low light performance. The other notable thing about the iPhone XS's camera is that it now offers depth control with portrait shots, so you can basically change the amount of bokeh after you shoot your photos. Over on the video side, they're pretty much the same. You're going to have 4K recording at up to 60 frames per second, and they both have the same 240 frames per second slow motion capture in 1080p. For this comparison, we shot photos with auto HDR enabled. As expected, both produce outstanding results with their respective cameras. In many instances even, it's tough to discern differences in their qualities. However, if you have a meticulous attention for detail, you'll ultimately recognize that the iPhone XS has the upper hand. When the conditions are really good, details are plentiful and colors are rich with the two phones. Where the iPhone XS truly delivers the goods is in its ability to be more liberal when it comes to automatically switching to HDR mode. It's definitely more apt to capture HDR shots in the automatic than the iPhone X, which is good because it results in a more neutral exposure throughout the shot. Don't get us wrong, the iPhone X still takes great looking HDR photos, but the iPhone XS tends to boost the shadows a bit more to draw out more details. When we capture nighttime shots with high contrast scenes, the results are almost identical with them as they produce good details, natural tone colors, and they're accompanied with very little noise. If there's one noticeable difference, it has to be the broader dynamic range achieved by the iPhone XS, particularly when it comes to the highlights. Now from the looks of it, the iPhone XS tones down the highlights better than the iPhone X, so those areas in these high contrast scenes are better exposed. Under really low light situations, the iPhone XS's larger sensor definitely shows its worth by delivering better results. Seeing that it's able to gather in more light, its performance is typically accompanied with slightly better details with significantly less noise in the scene. For what it's worth, the iPhone X still puts out some good results as well, but we notice more artifacting qualities and noise in the shadows. When it comes to recording video, the results are pretty much identical, so it's the iPhone XS that produces the more favorable results with each situation. They both top out at 4K resolution 60 frames per second, and there's no denying the amount of details that they're able to capture. However, the iPhone XS seems to be better at stabilizing its footage by just a smidgen more, while also gathering slightly sharper details in the process. In comparison, highlights can sometimes appear blown out with the iPhone X, whereas with the iPhone XS, you have more of a neutral exposure. Again, that larger sensor in the iPhone XS definitely helps under low light situations because its videos are noticeably better exposed, and the increase in exposure definitely helps to draw out more details and allows the camera to maintain its focus. In comparison, the iPhone X's performance is filled with more noise and more instances of it focus hunting. And the amount of noise with the iPhone X's performance definitely softens details tremendously. I already talked about how I like using both phones for watching HDR content on YouTube, but when I tested out their stereo speakers, I did notice that the iPhone XS has a slightly weaker output of 76 decibels versus 76.3 decibels for the iPhone X. It's a minor difference, and basically they both sound alike. Over on the call quality side, we're not finding any notable differences with their performances. Phone calls are loud and clear with both iPhones, especially with the robust tones coming out of their earpieces, which makes voices audible in just about any situation. Moving over to their speakerphones, voices again resonate very strongly. Interestingly enough, Apple claims on its website that the iPhone XS lasts up to 30 minutes longer than the iPhone X. While that's nonetheless an improvement for the newer phone, it's again not something we'd say is leaps and bounds better. Even stranger is that we don't notice a huge difference with the performances in our custom battery benchmark tests, and in fact, it's actually the iPhone X that has a slightly longer tally of 8 hours and 41 minutes in our test versus the 8 hours and 37 minutes with the iPhone XS. It's weird, I know, but in our day-to-day experience, we don't notice one that's better than the other. And the same could be said about their recharge times. There's no improvement for the iPhone XS. In fact, it takes 185 minutes for it to recharge versus 189 minutes for the iPhone X. So yeah, there's no difference, but at least they offer the convenience of wireless charging. Now before closing out this comparison, there's the matter of deciding a winner, right? If we're to simply go through all the categories and inspect the results, there's no arguing that the iPhone XS is the clear winner. But then again, pricing definitely can sway things. Currently though, it appears as though that most retailers still selling the iPhone X give it a discount of about $100 over the new iPhone XS. So knowing that, if you're in the position of considering both devices as your next daily driver, we're inclined to say go with the iPhone XS for the fact that it's the superior phone overall, with newer hardware. However, we can imagine that there will be more incentives attached to the iPhone X as the weeks and months go on, which can remarkably give consumers more reason to buy it. What if you're a current iPhone X owner and considering an upgrade? Well, we feel that the iPhone XS doesn't offer enough of a meaningful superior package to make the jump up. When it comes to the core fundamental things, you're getting the same exact experience with both phones. On top of that, the iPhone X's camera is still reputable, capable of producing outstanding results. Seriously, you're not missing out, more so given how you'll need to fork over yet another $1,000 to pick up the new iPhone. Save yourself the money and don't. And that is it for this comparison, guys. I hope that was informative. If you guys want to learn more about any of the stuff I talked about in this video, you can check out our website, PhoneArena.com. This is John V, signing off.